This series of videos I'll be doing is called the top 3 millennial repellents. These are just a few of the surefire ways to totally turn off a millennial buyer and really push them away, which we don't want to do, which is why I'm going over them here. First on the list here is rushing to a one-on-one meeting or one-on-one phone call. This is one that's tricky because a lot of sales trainers out there train that the best way to sell someone is on a phone call. So there's, of course, the appointment setting piece before the one-on-one, and that is very key to a lot of sales trainings that I've taught. But with millennials, that process, the appointment setting process, is a little bit longer than some of their older counterparts. So what do I mean by that? I'll give an example. I've been on some networking groups recently, and of course, a lot of folks on there push the one-on-one. Hey, let's meet for a one-on-one meeting. And I'm there, since I'm doing business essentially in a millennial world, I've grown to adapt and change to doing one-on-one meetings right off the bat. But recently, the people who just, even before I'm in a breakout room with them, hey, great to connect over a one-on-one meeting. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you do. I don't know if this would be a waste of time for me or not. So, but eventually, if I do get to know the person, or if we get in a breakout room, I'll have a one-on-one. That's me talking. But in general, for a lot of millennials, that is a big turnoff. The folks my age, we like to, since social media is such a big part of our lives, we like to check things out beforehand. We like to get to know someone on their online footprint first. So you want to make sure to, in your appointment setting process, stretch it out a little bit. Give them places, your millennial prospects, places where they can see more of what you are, of who you are and what you do. You can send them to a YouTube channel, to a Facebook page, things like that. Those are great ways to do it. But instant messenger is a great way to have some back and forth instead of shooting right for that one-on-one meeting. In fact, there's a few of my colleagues, young entrepreneurs out there, who their entire business is what's called chat closing. What chat closing is essentially they would log in to their client's account, some sort of like a virtual assistant, and chat their prospects to close them either on a sale or most often it is to book that appointment. But that's work involved. They get 10-15% commission just to make that connection from prospect to the one-on-one meeting. So that's why it's really, really important. If you haven't heard of chat closing before, it might be worth looking into for your business, or at least being aware that that's what it takes to have those skills to get to know each other, to set some banter in a Facebook Messenger or an Instagram direct message before getting on that phone call with a millennial. Continuing on with the top 3 millennial repellents. So these are just a few surefire ways to totally turn off a millennial buyer. We're covering number 2 here, which is patronizing millennial prospects when talking about your product or service. This is a tricky one. It's a big one as well. There's many different reasons why you might go to this place. First off is you're the expert. In whatever you do, of course, you are the expert. Like I'm America's top expert on why millennials buy. You're the expert in whatever you do. So it could be a challenge not to go to that place of, I know more than you, let me educate you, which millennials do not like. I don't want to talk too much about the school system, but it's failed a lot of us millennials, myself included. So coming from that place of, I'm going to educate you, not the best move. And another reason might be you might have kids that are millennials, and parents can sometimes hardly help but to come from that place of I'm here, you're there sort of thing. But I tend to shy away from it for sure if you are speaking to a millennial buyer. I'll share a quick example. I was on a one-on-one meeting after someone I'd met networking, a one-on-one meeting, and it was a network marketing product, which I've talked about that at length. I don't want to make this longer than it should be, this example, but there were some great, amazing opportunities within network marketing. There's some products I'm aligned with, Isogenics, for example, which is great nutritional products. doTERRA essential oils, to name a couple that I'm involved in personally. But there's a lot of folks that come from this patronizing place, and especially in this one-on-one meeting that I'm talking about here, the person was talking about, leaving 9 to 5 to make some extra income on the side or to have that additional stream of income. Well, I got news for you guys. It's us millennials watched our parents work for the same company for years and put tons of time into it, only to be laid off in things like the 2008 crisis, for example. Or if they weren't laid off, they were on the cutting block. So I think that the idea of a side hustle, the idea of making extra money, is the millennials, and when I say we, brought that into the mainstream, so to speak. So coming from that patronizing tone, like that we don't know what you're talking about, is a big, big turnoff. So what can you do instead? You can ask questions. I mean, what have you heard about blank, about my service, my products that I'm talking about? Maybe you've heard of it, but perhaps you don't know anything beyond that. So, I mean, that's a great thing to bring up. And just to treat your millennial prospects as equals. I mean, in the business world, that is exactly what we are. We're all equals. It brings me back to my corporate days when I was leading a team of 6 engineers in India, just really smart people, but they treated me as equals, which is so lovely. So really avoid patronizing millennials when you're selling to them, and you're going to have a better sales process. This time we are on the third and final blunder that will be sure to turn off a millennial buyer, and that is pushing the money. Something I talk about often because it's very important to millennials is values. So don't get me wrong, money is important, but it is not the end all be all for millennials. They care how they make the money, where that money is going to, where it's coming from. There are so many ways to make a living, more now than ever. With the internet the way it is, people like myself having our business almost entirely online, there's so many options. The money piece is not as important to us millennials anymore because there's so many different avenues to receive money from. The old adage of a nice secure job with good benefits, maybe a pension, which for us millennials don't exist anymore, unfortunately. So we're not focused on that, but it's a very common thing. So I'll give a quick example of my father and the differences between him being a young baby boomer and myself being a young millennial. So he's worked for corporate America for his whole life. Totally fine. It's just a different way of living. But for, I want to say, over 10 years, he worked for McDonald's corporate as an attorney. And then recently, after that, and up till today, he worked for a company called Kraft Foods, which has since split off, and now it's Mondelez that he works for, but essentially the same company and that's going on 17, 18 years, something in that range. That is very much the baby boomer mindset. It's a great example, but for someone like me or for a millennial, those don't necessarily line up with my values. Again, us millennials is a little bonus tip here. We love our health. We're very focused on health. So some of those food companies that my dad works for, that wouldn't align with a millennial, so to speak. I'm sure millennials do work there, but it is not as much as it could be. I can only imagine because, you know, it's just the way us millennials tick and the way we think. So when you're prospecting with a millennial, I would say to put your whys up front, put your values forward. That's going to really strike a chord. Then later in the sales conversation, you can bring up the money piece because it's not that it's unimportant to us, but it's just not the importance for millennials. So that's going to wrap this one up. I would love for you to have a copy of the Millennial Prospecting Checklist. It will help you avoid some of these blunders I'm covering here. That is, when you're prospecting with millennials, you can print it out, go through the list, make sure you're hitting everything right. And the link to that will be here in the description. Love for you to have a copy.